Our text is coming from Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through 30. And the title of our message is Don't Waste Your Talents. Last night, as I was sitting up in bed and just meditating on this text, I was reminded that in 2009, when Lena and I lived in Columbus, Ohio, attending Bible college, I was reminded how my wife was serving in the children's ministry at that church, and I was serving in an outreach ministry that was responsible for going into the inner city of Columbus, Ohio, and we would preach the gospel in the streets and preach the gospel in the projects. We would give out food and we would give out clothing. And there was a particular project in downtown Columbus that we sort of adopted. We had an affinity for this particular projects. And we would go through those projects and knock on doors and go into homes and sit down with junkie mothers and sit down with junkie fathers. And we would hold crack babies in our arms. And we would sit there and let people blow smoke in our face while we try to teach them about the Lord Jesus Christ. Never judging them for what they did not know, but just loving them and meeting them where they are. And it was during that season that my team and I fell in love with a group of teenagers who became very dear to me. I don't know where any of them are today. They are probably in their 20s or 30s now. But I had a deep affinity for this specific group of teenagers who most of them had no father and some of them had no mother. And they were living in homes that were really ratty and torn. And the only time they felt life is when we would show up each week to just sit with them and love on them and listen to them. And I just want to remind somebody that sometimes children does not spell love, G-I-F-T, but they spell love, T-I-M-E. And what they wanted from us was just time, and we would just sit there and enjoy them and sit in their presence. And on one occasion, when I was leading the evangelistic ministry, the campaign on that day, I took that group of teenagers outside of the projects and we walked towards downtown Columbus. And as we walked, we came to a graveyard and I stopped in front of the graveyard and I tapped all of them. I said, look out there in that graveyard and tell me, what do you see? And they responded. They said, oh, Brother Philip, we see tombstones. And I said, good. What else do you see? We said, Brother Philip, we see memorials. I said, good. What else do you see? He said, Brother Philip, we see grass and trees and flowers. I said, good. What else do you see? We'll see, Brother Philip, we don't see anything else. I said, are you sure? Look again. Tell me, what do you see? They said, Brother Philip, we don't see anything else. And I will never forget getting those teenagers to focus for just a moment. And I said, look out there. Let me tell you what I see. I see unfulfilled potential. I see ministries that were never started. I see books that were never written. I see marriages that were never formed, children that were never born, visions that were never realized. I seen wasted potential out there in that graveyard. I seen anointings and giftings and callings that people carried with them to the grave. I told them, look out there in the graveyard, you see now the wealthiest place on earth. For out there in their graveyard, there are many people who carried with them to their grave things that God placed on the inside of them that was supposed to come out of them while they was in this life. And for whatever reason, whether excuses, hard times, challenges, ignorance, they carried with them to their grave the things that God had intended for them to do in this life. And I never forgot that moment. This is a tragedy of modern humanity, that there are people dying every day and going to the grave carrying inside of them things that they were supposed to do in this life. This is even a greater tragedy in Christianity, of people who talk about callings and talk about giftings and talk about anointings and have all this show of all these things we do, and yet there are Christians leaving this life every week and every day carrying to their grave things that the Master intended for them to do while they was here, intended for them to accomplish while they was here, intended for them to pour out while they was here. But for whatever reason, they made excuses. They were busybodies in church. Man, they died having gone to the grave with the figurative babies that was inside them they were supposed to give birth to. They aborted those babies for whatever reason, and now they got to give an account to the Messiah for that.